Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Kathy Markov, and I'm so happy to be here with you to present today's webinar. This webinar is brought to you by the Santa Barbara County America's Job Center of California. This webinar will be posted to the YouTube channel for the America's Job Center, and I'm really looking forward to talking about this important topic. So let's get going. So, business writing. Now, one thing I want to tell you, I am not a business, I'm not an English teacher. I'm not, what do I want to say? I'm not an expert writer per se. And this material is developed from research on business writing, but also working with a professional writer to talk about tips and techniques. But I can tell you what I do know. So my background is all in workforce development and in human resource development and executive leadership in organizations. So although I'm not into the mechanics of writing, I know how to apply them. And I also know the importance of business writing as a professional skill. So this is because presenting yourself professionally in many different ways, but particularly in writing, is a key professional skill. So we're going to look at this again, not from the lens of like an English teacher, but talking about really actionable principles of business writing for resumes, cover letters, and all kinds of business correspondence. So one thing I will say is that I have a business where I do management and leadership training inside organizations. And I get a lot of calls for business writing. It is important that everyone invest in their skills. And this, in an hour, we can't teach people how to write. What we can talk about is the best practices, the approach, and things to think about. And I say that because, I had a large staff, and I had staff who were really good at writing, who just needed this perspective that I'm going to give you here. And then I had other staff who actually, they needed to go and take a formal class, like at the community college, in writing. So I just want to clarify what this is and what this isn't. In this hour, and in the businesses I come into, sometimes it's a 2-hour class or a 4-hour class. I can teach you the principles of effective business writing and communication, but it is not, again, like a formal writing class. So if there are people that have issues with language and how to put a sentence together, those kind of things, you really need to take a longer class with an expert on those kind of things. However, there's a whole bunch we can say, and this is important. So this is from Lee Iacocca, right? A big business leader. He says, you can have brilliant ideas, but if you can't get them across, your ideas won't get you anywhere. And in business, it's not just about presenting yourself in speaking with people or making formal presentations, but writing today is even more important than it was, say, 20 years ago when I started my career. We're going to talk about that. So let's look at written communication in the workplace. Of course, email, and that is a primary mode of communication. I remember when we didn't have email. How were we able to communicate with one another? Well, we used the mail a lot. We used little notes. We had little notepads, to, from, time. And I remember every evening I'd sit down with my notepad, jot off little, notes to people, put them in their little mailbox in the photocopy room. I know it sounds very old fashioned, but when I first started my career, that's how it was done. And then after being in the workforce about a year and a half, I got this computer at my desk. It was mainframed computer. I know it sounds very old. It wasn't actually that long ago, but if you think back to the beginning of your career, Maybe email was used. Now, are you using texts? Are you have some kind of internal way of communicating, Slack, instant messaging? So when I say email correspondence, it's all that kind of thing of how you correspond in business that might be even specific to your particular organization, but you're likely to have multiple ways of communicating with one another internally and externally. You're going to have to write reports, both internal, external. This could even include like manuals, policies and procedures. I know I've written tons of those, being in the HR or leadership position, where you have to clearly define what you want people to do and put it in writing. It's got to be clear. Websites, social media, any way that you get your word out. This could even be kind of marketing. Right? And I know that is a whole nother field of how do you communicate in writing and visual, but there's a lot of text that goes into these things as well. And I know there are a lot of people that get hired and then all of a sudden they're in charge of the social media feed. Well, how good is your business writing? Are you writing in sentences? Are you making sure that, all of the spelling is correct, that it's coming across clear? And so these are the things that we're going to talk about. Writing contracts. Now, a lot of times there are templates for some of these things, but nevertheless, as you fill it in, you need to be able to write it in a way that's going to accomplish your goal. Handwritten notes. We're not going to talk a lot about that here, but the principles still apply. And the thing I will say to you is, if you get a handwritten thank you note from someone, is that different than getting, say, a text or an email? Well, yes, it is. It's very different. But even when we're handwriting, we need to make sure we're coming across well, because there are a lot of reasons. So the first one, writing skills ensure effective business communication. Everybody's so busy. Nobody has time to try to go back and forth and figure out what the heck you said. What do you want me to do after I read this? Why are you wasting my time with all of this information? Okay, we'll talk about that. Writing skills make the difference between a good employee and a bad employee. Now, that is pretty harsh, but I will tell you that I had a staff member who was excellent with numbers, and she was my assistant, and I expected her to write up notes from a business meeting. She couldn't do it. She couldn't write the notes. So we sat down and I talked to her about a lot of the things that we're talking about now. This is really important. You want to be in that good category. So being conscious of how you're coming across in writing is vital and really, really important. So let's look at the next one. You demonstrate your intelligence. And this is kind of hard to hear a little bit, but if you're using the wrong tense, or your language is more colloquialisms as opposed to what you would really put in writing, this unfortunately comes across as maybe your intelligence is impacted. I will tell you honestly that I am a terrible speller. I was never diagnosed as dyslexic, but my guess is that I am. I transpose letters, and before computer technology that was so good at checking spelling, I would come across like, oh my God, she has a college degree and she can't spell. There's something wrong. So this is really, really important, because if you can't write clearly, people think there's something not right with you, and you don't want to come across that way. Fortunately, there are a million tools on the internet to help us with that. So that is a good thing. Good writers, you come across as being credible. You know what you're talking about. Part of this is, as we'll learn, is that a good piece of writing took a lot of thinking before it went into it, thinking and organizing. So when you come across as someone who is thoughtful and organized, you have more credibility in the workplace. You can stand out for your good writing. You can be more influential. What does that mean? Getting your ideas across. You can have a lot of influence on other people. Business writing conveys courtesy. So courtesy, how do you demonstrate respect and politeness within your industry. Well, the way in which you put together messages that you send people can convey that. Is this important? Yes, because that's all about developing and maintaining rapport with the people that you're talking with. And that's also how you get to be more influential. Writing skills help to keep good records. So one of the things about computer technology, if you're doing it over an electronic source, is the good thing about it, and there's a dark side to it too, but it remembers, it copies. I know that my email ends up being a record of a lot of things that happened, decisions that were made, plans of action. So if you write it clearly, there's no confusion. It can help keep good records of what happened. You boost your professional confidence because you know that if you sit down and write something, the more practice you get, the more effective you get, the better you get at it, that you will be able to feel confident in how you're approaching your work. The next one is business writing builds a solid web presence, right? And when we think about web presence, sometimes we think about a website or social media, but some of the things are when you think about what is the record of your interactions in the workplace that are accessible by other people. So good writing skills can help you when you're putting together your LinkedIn profile. Now, this is really important. Or when you endorse someone or write something about someone or for someone else, the kind of comments you make, it's really, really important that you're writing things that are understandable, make sense, convey your message, and influence others. And finally, you can promote yourself in your career, from writing your resume and your cover letter to, again, building that social media presence. Because if we're not really good at business writing, this can be the impact that it has, right? What the heck? What the heck was that all about? You don't want people scratching their head after you have sent a business correspondence. Because you don't know, that person might be your boss, your future boss, the owner of the company, someone important in your career. So good writing is clear thinking made visible. And this is really true because this is the place to start. Writing is a 4-step process. The first thing is you got to think about it. So to be honest, when I was in my freshman year of college, I was really struggling writing term papers for my classes. And fortunately, I took a writing class. And in that writing class, I really liked the instructor. And so I went and I was just really honest. I said, I am struggling. I don't even know where to start. And so this teacher helped me to understand that thinking is the first step to any writing project. And this teacher also said, like 90% of your work should be in thinking about what you're going to say. You can't write if you don't know what you're going to say. The other thing is, think about how you might speak. How would you organize your thoughts in conveying a message if you were speaking with someone? This is a technique that I've talked about with my children as they struggle with their writing projects, but organizing. So first you think about your ideas, then you organize your ideas. And I think it's always good to start with index cards or a piece of paper, jot down your ideas and then start to organize what you're thinking about. The next is actually sitting down and writing it. But you can't skip these thoughts. You can't write about something you're not clearly thinking about. I mean, you can, but that's where you get all over the place and it's a mess. So you've got to plan it out by thinking, what is my message? What's my purpose? What am I trying to do? How is the best way to organize this message? Then sit down and write. The writing should actually come pretty quickly if you've done the thinking and the organizing. And then the 4th step, the all-important editing. I don't care how good of a writer you have been in the past. Every piece of writing should be edited. Sometimes you should include other people to edit. And I'm going to give you a very specific way of editing your information. But I don't send an email without reading it a couple of times. Sometimes I put things in the draft box if it's a really important email, sleep on it, come back the next day and reread it. This is really important. So let's talk about a few quick things. I want to talk about the myths. Is something a myth or is it a goal of business writing? So always use short sentences. I want you to think in your mind, is that a myth or a goal? That's a myth. You do not always have to use short sentences. State the facts clearly. Is that a myth or a goal? What do you think? That's a goal. We need to get the facts and state them clearly when we're in business writing. Present a logical argument, a myth or a goal? Well, that's a goal, yes. When we're writing for business, it's not a story. We are trying to be very succinct, and we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our audience for goals and that it's logical. Use only simple vocabulary, 1 or 2 syllabus words, myth or goal. That's a myth. We want to make things clear and concise, but that doesn't mean we can't use bigger words, right? We'll see in a minute, we need to think about our audience. Who's our audience? And meet the vocabulary to the needs of the audience. But you don't have to think that everything has to be 1 or 2 syllable words. Be proactive and persuasive. Well, of course, that's a goal. I mean, in business, we're trying to have some influence. We're trying to communicate a message that's going to have an action following it. So we want to be proactive and persuasive. Is eloquence needed or not needed? I mean, sometimes people say, oh, business writing, you don't need to be eloquent, but that's a myth. We want to make sure that people are interested in reading what we've written. So you can be eloquent depending on what the situation is. Business documents are dull. Is that true? This kind of is the opposite of what I just said. That's a myth. Business documents do not have to be dull, but we need to make sure that we're appropriate for the audience and we're able to draw them in and get to the point and give them a clear action item. Modify writing style for the reader, the situation, or your intention. Is this a myth or a goal? That's a goal of business writing. So here's our myths and goals. So let's look at the goals first. State the facts clearly. Present a logical argument. Be proactive and persuasive. Provocative, proactive and persuasive. Modify your writing style to meet the reader, the situation, and your intention. You don't have to use short sentences. You don't have to be super simple. You can be eloquent. And guess what? It doesn't have to be dull. In fact, if you make it more exciting, people are more likely to read it. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. So what is the purpose of business writing? It's to persuade people to accomplish organizational goals in the most effective manner. And we'll see that there are some challenges with that, because I mentioned earlier about my beginning of my career where email wasn't the way we communicated, and now it is. And my question to you to think about, has email made things easier or harder? We'll talk about that. So here is the thing. When we're writing for business, we're thinking about the content, but it's really vital that we think about the audience. Who is this piece of communication for? Is it for my peer? Is it for my boss? Is it for someone that works for me? Is it for a client? Is it for general purpose? Like, who is it for? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? This is really, really important. This is all the thinking pieces that go into it. And then what's the tone? We talk about business writing. Your tone can still come across, right? If you're in email and you're writing all capital letters, that's like screaming. Some people don't know that. And that may have a different intention. I worked with someone who used to love to send comments to emails in red. It was alarming to a lot of people. Think about that, because Red writing or all capitals sends a different kind of tone. How familiar are you? We'll talk a little bit about formality. All business writing doesn't need to be formal, but it does need to be professional. And you come across professionally with the tone. What's really important is that our intention, yay, I was successful, I was persuasive, I got my ideas across. We need to be careful because it's very easy that your intention might be one way, but the impact could be, what is this person saying? Why'd they send me this 10-page email? I don't have time to read this. Or why are they talking at me, with me like that? So this is really important. Let's start with the thinking and organizing. The question is, what method do you use? I mentioned to you there are a lot of different methods, particularly of getting your thinking together: mind mapping, word lists, index cards. When I was writing in college, I used to use a lot of index cards to organize my thoughts, right? Sometimes I'm not really clear on my thinking. I even pull out index cards now when I'm not really clear and I'm trying to think and organize. I'll put one thought or one idea on an index card and then have a pile of index cards, and then I can just lay them all out and start seeing categories of things that will come together. Mind mapping, you start with one idea and then just let your mind wander. You start with a circle, draw lines, have all these different ideas. Or just on a piece of paper, what are all the things that come to mind when you're talking about this topic? Be willing to eliminate things that are not as important as others and put things in categories. This is the thinking and organizing process that's essential and should take up the most amount of time. The writing itself should come pretty quickly. So once you've done a lot of that thinking, it's time to get organized. You can put together a traditional outline. Currently, I'm writing a proposal for a strategic planning event for a nonprofit in our area. And I've done, well, really, it was more of a word list. I put down a list of all the things that should happen based on notes that I took in the meeting. And now I'm putting it together in an outline format, right, where there's a introduction, middle with different sections, and a conclusion. This is very helpful. And then you could use a combination of these things or other things. But what's key is that you take the time to think and organize. So here are 5 strategies for organizing your paragraphs, or once you get down to the writing. Think about classification. So I just kind of talked about that. Put things together according to type, kinds, methods, categories. You could also consider a cause and effect analysis. So let's say you're trying to be proactive and you're wanting to communicate a message to your boss and his boss about a situation that you are anticipating would happen if things didn't change. So you talk about what's happening and the effect of that, right? Cause and effect. Or let's say you're trying to promote an idea. You have an idea for some great new program. You can talk about, why would this be a great program? What's the need? And if we did that, what would be the effect of that for our organization, for the program, for the people we serve? Process analysis. Go through sequentially and explain how everything is to be done. So this is very important if you're writing manuals or procedures for how people do things. It's sequential, explains how to do something. Right? That's a very common thing that people find themselves writing in business. Compare and contrast. So you're comparing one thing with another. You're making an argument. You're trying to decide which website company to go with. And you've been out there meeting with people and your boss says, I want to know what you think. So compare and contrast. Compare one with the other. The similarities, differences, make recommendations based on that. Or, you can give some kind of an illustration. I'm not talking necessarily about pictures, although pictures could be put in all of this. Graphics could be put in all of this. And I suggest it because part of business writing is making it clear, making it simple for people to understand. But you could give an illustration, meaning more of an example, right? Provide examples of different situations that are happening. Mhm. You can use these to organize your paragraphs. You could use one approach or you could use several approaches. But actually, if you've done the thinking and organizing, my friend and consultant for writing, she's up in San Luis Obispo, Megan Maxwell Smith, says that once you've done the thinking and the organizing, the writing part should be like paint by numbers. So if you've put together a great outline, you've done the research, you know what your points are. When you sit down and write, it should just come right out. It should be very easy, paint by numbers. You have it all organized. So again, spend, I don't know, 80 to 90% of your time getting clear on what you're going to write about. Use a piece of paper, index cards. You probably could do something on the computer too, but what I'm going to warn you against, don't just sit down and start writing, because it could be just a garbly goop of a mess. Get really clear on what you're doing. Good writing is clear thinking made visible. This goes back to what we talked about a minute ago. The audience, the tone, the purpose, that makes up your content. So this is important. Let's talk a little bit about grammar. And this is where I gave you a caveat. I'm not a grammar teacher, but grammar is important because small mistakes in business writing can lead to making a big, bad impression. This is important because, again, people will question, you know, what's that person doing in that position? They can't even write a sentence. So here are some mistakes. Using the wrong name or misspelling a name. You know, when you put things in writing, they live on forever. And especially now, as our correspondence is mostly being sent electronically, or anything you handwrite could be scanned or taken a picture and sent everywhere. You make a big mistake like that, a lot of people could know. Homophone confusion. So there for there, your for your. See, these are contraction, right? There. This is a possessive, not they are. Your, again, a possessive, not you are. It's is a contraction for it is, but it's is a different word. So you really need to be careful about these things. When I see problems with particularly the word there, and I think, oh, you know, they're not well educated. These are the things that go through people's minds. You need to be careful with that. Dangling participles. So, you know, here's an example. Having finished the project on time and under budget, this product will be very competitive. So it's just not clear. What are you talking about? Using they, their, them with a singular antecedent. So, you know, what's interesting here is, here's an example. Everyone should send their ideas to the project manager. Try, all team members should send their ideas to the project manager, right? So who's everyone? We don't know who that is in the first example. Also, one thing I will say, there've been a lot of opening up of using the plural when you're writing. So again, I said I used to write a lot of manuals, policies and procedures in the HR world. We'd have to say he and she, or he or she, him or hers. You know, it was very confusing. And so now we are free to use they, theirs, them. So we're putting the two genders together to be more inclusive. And I think it's a helpful thing, but we got to think about how we use it, when we use it. Missing extra words. So, you know, a lot of computer programs, and what I will say is if you're working, say, in Word, it has a spell checker or an editor. It's gotten better over the years, but there's another program that's called Grammarly that you can add on to whatever, you know, word processing program you're using. Grammarly is great. Another one that's really excellent, Google Documents, has a wonderful editor in it. You could take anything you did in Word, upload it into Google, and you get all of these things. You have missing words, extra words. You know, this is why our computers are the robots that read it. We can't rely on that 100%. We still need to do some editing, what I'm going to talk about. But I will tell you right now, and I say this all the time. I say this to people who've worked for me. I teach at the community college. I say this, if you're putting something in writing and you're using a computer to do it, there's no mistake for missing words, extra words, and or spelling errors. You have no mistake for making spelling errors because you need to run everything you write through the robot reading, right? The computer, in order to make sure that it's good. Be careful of jargon. You know, jargon is acronyms, things that you're very familiar with, but who else knows what that is? STD, right? Ooh, if I don't know what that means, I think it means something else. LOL, right? You need to spell things out first and put them in parentheses. This is really, really important. You're writing a cover letter or resume and you're using all this jargon for things, people won't understand what you're talking about, what you're able to do. This is really important. Let's talk a little bit about resume writing, okay? So let's start with the mistakes. Adding a wrong career objective. So this is usually the result of a generic resume and lack of attention to detail. But I'll say to you, having been a hiring manager, when I see someone sending me a resume for, say, business services representative, which is what I had that title, and it says something, I'm looking for an exciting career in sales, I think, oh, you don't even know what you're applying for. Frankly, I'm not a big fan of career objectives unless you're going to customize it. I want to work at, you know, XYZ company doing XYZ, and that comes from the job announcement. Otherwise, be careful because you don't want to have the wrong work career objective going to a different job. Because honestly, in a resume, you have about 7 seconds to get the hiring manager's attention to even consider you for a phone call or any kind of interview. You know, it's very likely that you have the wrong career objective. It ends up in the trash can. You don't want that. Errors in contact information. Be careful that your contact information on your resume is correct. And this is about the spelling, but it's also about what is your email address? I mean, I've seen things like hot chick at AOL. You know, am I going to hire you to represent my company? No. And this day and age, it doesn't cost anything to get a new email that is more appropriate. And maybe your name is Joe Smith and that name has been taken, but can't you think of something that is professional? This is really, really important because honestly, you'll end up right in the trash can, those kind of things. And it's the first thing that people see when they look at a resume. So make sure your contact information is correct and appropriate. Spelling errors, I've told you this. There's no excuse for spelling errors. Typos might be a little bit different, right? But spelling errors, there's no excuse. And people are looking at things electronically. So people, you may not have your spell checker on, but the person who's receiving the email might and be able to see where you've made all your mistakes. So just make sure you've got those spell checkers on and you're using them. Dating yourself. Now, this is not a class in resume writing. I have a workshop on it up at the YouTube channel for Santa Barbara County's America's Job Center, California, and there are other lots of good information about resumes, but you don't want to be putting so many dates on there that people say, oh my God, this person's ancient. It's even subconscious. In fact, you really don't have to put dates on there, or you don't have to go back. What they say, you can go back maybe 10 years. And there may have been some great things that you did previous to that. In the beginning of my career after graduate school, I started writing some training manuals for the US Peace Corps. So I did some writing, but you know, this was 20 years ago. I want people to know that I have the capacity to do business writing and write manuals, but I'm not going to put the date on there. I might put the date of my work experiences that are relevant to that job within the last 10 years. But there also might be some accomplishments that I just want them to know I did it, but I don't want to make it seem like it dates me, makes me seem really old. This is important. They're subtle, And I know when we write our resume, we get really attached to our experience, but we need to let go of some things. Too long. So depending on the industry, if you're applying in an industry that likes long resumes, you would know it. So I just told you that I've been on the faculty at Cuesta Community College and Cal Poly and San Luis Obispo. Hey, in the education field, they like more of what is called a curriculum vitae, a very long resume that has everything you ever did. Some of the science fields are that way, but most fields are not. So I would say, someone very experienced might have a 2-page resume. Most of us should keep our resume to 1 page. That means you've got to be very clear and succinct in the way that you write it. And remember, what's the purpose of a resume? To get a phone call, to be able to talk with someone, to get them to know you live. It is not to tell them everything you ever did. So be careful about making it too long. If it's too dense and hard to read, you need to leave some white space. Best practices, use a local area code. And I know that sounds a little weird, but here in the Central Coast, I know that a lot of people want to move to the area. So if I see a Bakersfield area code, I'm going to be a little cautious. People in Bakersfield, yeah, they want to move to the coast, but do they understand the difference in the cost of living? So let's say you are living here, but you're still using out of the area code. This could be something that the hiring managers aren't that interested in. So use a local area code, create some white space, and customize every resume to the job announcement. Now, I know that sends terror through people, but I would rather see people send, 2 really good applications, cover letters, and resumes a week, rather than send 500 out, all with generic resumes, generic cover letters that don't match the job announcement. So that for me is something you need to do. Let's talk about cover letters. Again, spelling errors, no excuses. Addressing the letter to no one, or worse, to the wrong person. You could say to the hiring manager or the future boss of, but you could also pick up the phone and ask, I'm applying for this job, who should I address the letter to? You're going to really stand out and impress the people. Or get on the internet. Sometimes the title of the person who is interested in hiring, particularly if it's a small organization, you might be able to figure out who that might be. Or maybe you could get the name of the HR representative or the recruiter for the organization on your first cover letter. That's appropriate. They know you don't know necessarily who your boss is going to be, but if you can put a name and a title of someone that is involved in the hiring process, it stands out. Okay. So if you don't know that, don't make it up and put something like the hiring manager. Don't make a mistake with the company name and address. Be very clear who you're applying to. Don't claim skills or accomplishments that are not backed up by your resume. So things that you talk about in the cover letter, make sure they're addressed in your resume. Remember, you want to customize these things for every application. Don't talk about salary requirements in your cover letter. It's too early, right? You could take yourself out of the race before you even started. I would say also benefits. Those are conversations that happen after you get an offer. Don't talk about someone's COVID status or say, I'm for vaccines or against vaccines or whatever. Not at the beginning. Wait until you can get to know people, you're getting closer to an offer, you have an offer, then you start to open up these conversations about salary, benefits, anything else that's going on in the workplace. And I know it's probably the first thing you want to know or the first thing you want to get out there, but unfortunately, the process of looking for a job, you'll really turn off the hiring managers. So, best practice. Include a customized cover letter with every application. It need not be long. Provide a strong call to action, right? What do you want people to do as a result of this business correspondence? This is really important. Provide that compelling why right? In a cover letter, why to schedule the interview with you. But with anything you do, what do you want someone to do? Business correspondence shouldn't just be like, oh, here, read something else. People are reading so much, they don't need anything else that doesn't have a purpose for them. But this is the thinking process, right? Getting clear. So what's the call to action? In a cover letter, a compelling reason why to schedule an interview with you. So let's talk a little bit about editing. So I told you that a lot of times sometimes I will ask my husband, for example, to read an email. Usually I do edit it. I read it 2 or 3 times every email before, even if it's just a couple of lines. I never just write an email and send it. Write it, go back and look at it, read it a couple times, and then say, yeah, it takes me more time. But the way we present ourselves in writing builds or destroys our reputation. And this is very, very important. So for any important piece of business communication, written communication, you need to get an editing buddy for everything. Don't send your resume or a cover letter out without having someone else read it. So what you're wanting to do is in the editing, you want to retain the meaning and the style of the writing, but shorten it wherever possible and improve the clarity. So there are 3 ways a document needs to be read through at least 3 times to be properly edited. So the first time, the lens is like an honest friend. You want to read the document for completeness, for overall flow, to provide feedback like this really doesn't make sense, right? Okay, that's one. Then you want to read it like a fact checker. This time you're reading for substance, the content, the format, the facts, the policies. Are all those things in there clear? And the third time you read it, it's like a robot. Some people have even said, read it backwards. I know, how do you read backwards? But maybe start at the bottom and move up. So you're looking for the mechanics. Is the punctuation right? Capitalization right? Noun agreement right? Verb tense right? Consistency. Is it repetitive? If you have headings in the document, are they consistent? The same font? Are they bolded or not? Making sure everything aligns right. So you see, the first is overall, general. Does this make sense? The second one, is it factual? And then the third one is looking at the bigger picture, making sure it's all organized correctly. So if you make changes, then you got to start again. So let's say you go through and you find out that, oh, well, when I read like a robot and I looked at the headings, actually these things belong in a different place. So now you move things around, you got to go back and read it again. Yes, editing takes time, but it is the key to be effective as a communicator in writing. Let's talk about email. Email overload. Is that real? Yes, it is. So it increases our stress levels. The average number of business email each worker sends and receives per day is 122. I'm sure that I get more. I'm bombarded and overloaded with email. It was intended to be a means of communication that would make things easier, but I think it's complicated things. The average person spends 28% of the workday reading and responding to email. That's more than a quarter of their, almost a third of the day, just managing email. And I can attest to that. And I don't know how really to solve that. It is, right? It's a primary mode of written communication in the workplace. Less than half of the emails deserve any attention. So I will tell you that you need to be careful about lists that you get on, about the attention you pay to things that aren't that important. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Only 38% are important emails. So this is important to think about too. Which emails are the most important to you? Because you've got to prioritize and understand and use email well. Email usage is only growing. And one of the things I'll say about email, it's very, very easy to send emails off. but don't expect an immediate response. Email is not intended to be like an urgent message. You may send an urgent message, but nevertheless, you're trying to get in touch with someone, you emailed them, you haven't heard from them, pick up the phone, get out of your desk and walk to see them and say, hey, can you read my email? This is really important because email sometimes, email is not instant messaging. We should be turning off the email and only checking it a couple times a day in order to keep that correspondence going. But we shouldn't have the expectation or allow people to have us tied to the email because it is a very stressful thing. So I'm going to show you a little video. And one of the things I want to do is make sure that you're going to be able to hear this video. So I'm going to share my sound and I'm going to optimize the video clip. And I'm hopeful that you are going to be able to hear this and see this. So I'm going to show you the video. If anyone has problems, give me a thumbs down and we'll start it again. But I love this video. It's quite humorous. So here we go. Email.
Hey, Tyler, you going to that all-day meeting tomorrow?
I'll be on vacation from Tuesday, June 27th until 2 days ago.
Your auto response is still on.
I'll be on vacation from Tuesday, June 27th until 2 days ago.
Okay, everyone, I need you to send me your reports ASAP before lunch if possible.
Will do, Trip. Will do, Trip. Will do, Trip. Will do, Trip.
Why are you including me in this?
We'll be there around 7 tonight, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Kind regards, Trip Crosby, Regional Sales Manager. Work 404-555-6112, extension 405. Mobile 404-555-3767. Email trip@biz. Success is always an option. John Maxwell, author.
Here's that report you needed.
I don't see anything.
Oh, dang it, I forgot to attach it.
Hey, Beth, did you see all the submissions we got today?
OMG, I know!
Easy on the all caps.
Sorry.
It's okay. Semicolon, close parenthesis.
Hey, son. You have to watch this video of this cat sleeping on a horse. It is so cute.
Mom, I'm at work.
Dear friend, I am Johnson Emmanuel. This might come to you as a surprise. I'm the next heir to the throne in Nigeria, and I want to offer you a large sum of money.
Please stop coming here.
Hi, Trip. Are you satisfied with...
Hi, I'm the administrator. I could not deliver this document. It was too big. On Monday at 10:37 a.m., Paul wrote, "Hi, Trip. This is the latest version of the document you were looking for. Hope it's not too late. Paul."
Yeah, I know what I wrote.
Hey, really looking forward to seeing you guys tonight. Oh yeah, circular disclosure. The information transmitted just now is intended only for the person or entity to which it is addressed, and it may contain confidential and/or privileged material. Any review, retransmission...
I don't know what that means.
Inbox full.
That's what he said. Hey, what's this poker game I hear about this weekend?
Who's that guy?
You mean to bring anything, or?
I meant to invite a different David. Rain check?
Email can be frustrating, but that's probably because you're trying to use it for the wrong things, like status reporting or approval tracking.
If you're looking for a smarter way to manage work...
Okay,
Hey,
so
Tyler,
we're not going
going
to
to that all-day
do
meeting?
an advertisement for that group, but I think that video is funny, and it talks about some of the things that go on in email. So I love email as a tool, but it has to be used right. So let's talk a little bit about that. Number one rule with email, always use a subject line and try to think about the subject line as a method to organize email. So for example, I might put report, : and then the name of the report. And this doesn't only help the person you're sending it to, but it helps you because all of your email gets saved in your send box. So that subject line is key. Don't send business email without a subject line, and think clearly about what that subject line is so that it describes what's in there. This is very, very important. Carefully consider the CC, that stands for carbon copy, right? That you're just, or blind CC, right? Blind CC means you send it to somebody and the other person who's getting it, the original recipient, doesn't know that the owner of the company is on it. People use blind CC a lot when they're trying to get people into trouble. Be careful with that. And be clear on what CC means. If an email comes to you CC, it means it's for your information only. You're not to respond. A lot of people don't know that. Be careful when email come in. If it's directly to you, they're looking for a response. If you're CC'd, it's just for your information only. Don't get into the fray of the conversation. I see a lot of organizations that get into what I call the email war, where somebody sent an email to somebody else and they got a response and they didn't like it. So they start adding people in the CC, and then they send it back and forth, and the CC people get into the conversation. It just becomes a big mess. And all the while, eventually the boss gets CC'd. Now everybody's in trouble. And with email, anybody can go through and read everything that was said. I always say this, what does the E in email stand for? It's not electronic. The E in email stands for evidence, right? Anything you send over an email system can be tracked, can be recorded, can be held, you can be held accountable to it. So be careful with that. Be sure that if you say you're going to attach files, that you do attach files. What is happening, things are getting better and better with the editing programs within email. It used to be, you'd say, hey, see this document, you'd send it off, and then, whoops, I forgot. Now, when I put something like that, the document is attached, like that's part of the narrative within the email. If I don't attach a document, I use Gmail. Gmail will tell me, I think you're missing an attachment. So things have gotten better with that, but make sure that you're attaching documents. You can mark things of high importance. Be careful with that. If everything is high importance, then it has no meaning. Only mark things high importance if it's really high importance. Make sure that you have a signature line with your contact information. I'm like a stickler for this. I work for an organization, there was no policy with regard to that. So I would be, say, on the road, I would need to give someone a call and I couldn't get their phone number. So I instituted a quite strict email signature policy. And I was very specific, because if people just were making up their signature line, you get all sorts of crazy things, right? So if you work for an organization that has a logo, make sure the logo is right, the right size, the right color, the right aspect ratio. Dictate it to people on how they should put their contact information. Do you want quotes or not quotes? I mean, all organizations should be very clear on that. If you're in business for yourself or you're looking for a job, ensure that your contact information is part of a signature line so people can get your email and then quickly get in touch with you in other ways. Always review your email before you hit send. I told you that. So some of the things that I talked about with regard to the subject line is so important for sorting and searching in your e-box, because your e-box can be an email box, your inbox can be a great way to store and file information. You can sort it by date from the newest to the oldest. You can sort by attachment. You can sort by the name of the person. Now, this is a great way. Let's say, you were doing something with some organization, for example, you're getting these messages, but really you don't need to keep them. So you can search for that particular thing and just get rid of them all, right? You can search by the sent, you can search by which ones you deleted. So it's important that we learn to manage that well. So that's the end on that. And I know that we're getting close on time. but I want to review some of the writing best practices. And I know I focus a lot on email because it's a primary means of business correspondence, but in general, here are some writing best practices. First, know your audience. What's in it for the reader, right? This is really important. What does professional mean to your audience? You don't have to be always so formal, or you might want to be formal, right? I know that there are people that I correspond with in an informal, professional, but informal way, but then I'm going to send them, like I do strategic planning. So maybe when we're planning it, I'll be very more informal, professional, but informal. But when I send the final report, I make it very, very formal and professional. So you can change the formality, but it's about knowing your audience and what you're sending to them. Think through the message, right? Remember the 5 W's: what, where, when, how, where, what, who, what, when, where, why, and then how. So remember that. Are you answering all those questions? Get rid of the jargon, the buzzwords, the cliche. Pay attention to names, titles, genders, right? And again, we can be gender neutral in our writing now, which I love. Make sure that you're careful with that, right? You don't want that small thing to actually have a huge negative impact. Less is more. Keep it tight, right? Nobody has time to read these long emails. There was a brilliant engineer that I worked with, and the owner of the company would ask him for information, a simple question. And this guy would spend an hour writing this 10-page email to the guy. And the owner of the company came to me. This is one of the prompts for this particular business writing class that I taught in this company, saying, the guy's brilliant, but he sends me these emails. I don't have time to read a 10-page email. Right? Less is always more. People can come back to you and ask for more information. Or if there's a lot of information, put it in another document in a different report, and then write a couple of lines in an email with the basic facts and attach a document that people can use for more information if they need it. Nobody likes to get these long emails. Nobody has the time or the attention for it. So be tight. And if you have a lot more information to provide, make it in another way to present it, either a report or a PowerPoint presentation or an Excel document, and attach it so that if people can get the gist of what you're talking about, and if they need to dive in and dig down, they can look at the attachment. Offer a call of action, right? What do you want the reader to do? If you're looking for work, put a call of action in your cover letter. You want them, I really want to work for your company, and I'd love an opportunity, 5 minutes of your time to make a connection and see if I'm a good fit. So, okay, so you're asking someone for 5 minutes of their time. That, I think, once you get them on the phone, then maybe you can talk to them longer. Or if you're sending out something, what do you want them to do with it? Always provide that. When I get an email that has a lot of information, but I don't know what to do with it, it's just waste time, it's confusing, and it shows me that the person hadn't really thought about what they were doing. Don't provide too many choices of call to action, right? Make it clear you want them to do this one thing, or you want them to do 2 things. Right. And one of the things I will say too, in terms of business writing, you have a meeting with someone. I have a meeting with someone. I always send a follow-up saying, this is what we talked about. This is what we agreed to. Very succinct. But again, it's getting to that call of action. I'm expecting you to send me these documents, right? Make it clear. Nobody has time to kind of figure out what's going on. And finally, you want to proofread, right? Check, check, check. Remember, there's those 3 different ways. Read like a best friend, right? Read like a fact checker. Read like a robot. These are really important. So these are your best practices for business writing. And I want to encourage you to work with one another to really improve your business writing skill. Because if you become a good business writer, you'll become a very, very valuable person to your organization. So with that, that's it. thank you so much. We always ask for some feedback. There is a SurveyMonkey link to the workshop, and the workshop will be placed in the YouTube channel for America's Job Centers of California for Santa Barbara County. So with that, I want to thank you so much. I hope you got something out of it, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.